The gymnasium of Lincoln Arena buzzed with electric anticipation, packed wall to wall with roaring students, its parents, alumni, and the occasional scout leaning forward from the bleachers' eyes, locked on the court where two high school titans were about to collide. Westdale High and Ridgewood Academy. This wasn't just a basketball game. It was a battlefield laced with years of bitter history, bruised egos, and burning pride banners. Hung-high sweat glistened on players' foreheads under the harsh lights, and the echo of basketballs slamming the hardwood danced like war drums against the cold air of early winter. Jaden Carter stood near the three-point line, bouncing the ball with rhythm and rage, his muscles coiled like a loaded spring. He wasn't just Ridgewood's captain, he was their legend in the making, born to a legacy of athletes, driven by a relentless hunger to outshine every record that had ever existed. Jaden didn't play for stats or scholarships, he played for domination. And nothing fueled him more than the thought of humiliating Westdale. Their colors, their chants, their smug coach, they made his blood boil. Years ago as a freshman, he had watched Ridgewood fall to Westdale in overtime, and the sting had stayed in his bones like a scar he couldn't erase. Since that day, he had one rule: never, ever lose to Westdale again. But across the court, stretching and tightening her ponytail with calculated calm, stood the one player he hadn't prepared for. Zara Miles, Westdale's captain, underestimated by every analyst, ignored by the press, and often sidelined in conversations dominated by male players. Zara didn't mind. She had built herself from doubt, carved her game from silence, and earned her captaincy, not through talk, but through grit, vision, and a calm deadlier than fire, raised by a single mother who had once coached Division II basketball. Zara had studied the game like a language, translating every opponent's move, internalizing strategies, and turning weakness into weapons. For years, she had watched boys like Jaden get handed praise and spotlight, but tonight she would flip the script the moment her eyes met Jaden's. As at half court, the crowd disappeared. No chants, no whistles, just silence thick with meaning. His stare was aggressive, almost mocking, as if daring her to flinch, but Zara stood unshaken, shoulders squared, chin slightly raised, her eyes burning with quiet fire. She didn't need to speak. Her presence screamed confidence, and Jaden felt it unfamiliar. Tension under his skin, not fear, but recognition, as warm-ups continued. Coaches barked last-minute reminders, players exchanged fist bumps, and the clock ticked toward tip-off. Not yet. The air was already thick with something deeper than rivalry. This wasn't banter, this wasn't sportsmanship. It was war dressed as a basketball game. The gym may have been neutral ground, but every inch of it felt like a stage set for battle. And every heartbeat, every glance, every breath they took added weight to what was coming. As the announcer called the starting lineups, Zara and Jaden stepped forward like gladiators summoned to the arena. And as they brushed shoulders during introductions, the crowd missed the faintest moment. A smirk from Zara and a clenched jaw from Jaden. The story had begun, and neither of them knew how far it would go, but both knew one thing for certain. This game would not be just a game, it would be a reckoning. The gymnasium of Lincoln Arena buzzed with electric anticipation. Packed wall towel with roaring students, parents, alumni, and the occasional scout leaning forward from the bleachers. Eyes locked on the court where two high school titans were about to collide, Westdale High and Ridgewood Academy. This wasn't just a basketball game, it was a battlefield, laced with years of bitter history, bruised egos, and burning pride banners. Hung-high sweat glistened on players' foreheads under the harsh lights and the echo of basketballs. The opening whistles sliced through the tension like a blade through fabric. And in that instant, the gym erupted into chaos. Cheers, stomps, chants, and whistles exploding in all directions. But on the court, nothing else existed except the ball in the air and the storm brewing beneath it. Jaden Carter leaped with animalistic ferocity, his fingers brushing the ball just ahead of Westdale's center, claiming the first possession for Ridgewood. And as his sneakers thudded back to earth, he bolted into motion like a predator unleashed. Ridgewood's offense was fast, ruthless, and laser-focused, with Jaden at the helm, barking signals like a general commanding troops in enemy territory. Every dribble was violent. Every pass was a missile. He crashed into defenders, pivoted with a snarl, and sliced through the key before launching into a thunderous dunk that shook the backboard and drew roars from the Ridgewood crowd. But as he landed and turned, he saw Zara. Miles already at half-court, unshaken, her eyes locked on him not with fear or admiration, but with eerie tactical clarity. The next possession, she moved with quiet authority, gliding past her defender like wind around a corner, not even flinching as Jaden stepped up to block her lane. She faked left, crossed over and burst to the right, finishing with a flawless reverse layup that kissed the glass with elegance and dropped through the net like it had been destined. The crowd gasped not at the points but at her calm. Jaden clenched his jaw from that moment on. The game morphed into something darker, sharper, and more personal. What began as a team sport spiraled into a duel between two forces, Zara and Jaden, each trying to break the other, not just in points but in will. Jaden ramped up his physicality, bodying through defenders, grunting with each drive, his every basket punctuated with emotion and noise. He stared Zara down after each shot, as if demanding submission, but she never gave him that satisfaction. Instead, she responded with precision mid-range jumpers that fell like daggers, assists that sliced through Ridgewood's defense, and a rhythm that infected her whole team. Westdale started matching Ridgewood, not with speed, but with control. Every move calculated like a chess master baiting an opponent toward disaster. The referees began to miss things, the crowd became volatile, Ridgewood's bench yelled for fouls while Westall's fans screamed for justice in the second quarter with the score neck and neck. Zara intercepted a pass and burst forward on a fast break. Jaden, trailing, exploded down the court and met her under the basket with a hard, thunderous body check that sent her skidding across the hardwood. Gasps turned to silence for a brief moment. Everything froze, players halted, coaches stared, and the referee's whistle pierced. Through with shrill authority, Zara lay still. Jaden stood over her chest, heaving his face unreadable, and then slowly, Zara rose, brushing off her elbows, staring him down with a look so calm, so composed that it rattled him more than any scream could have. Threat issued a warning, no foul, just tension. Zara turned and walked to the line, ball in hand, and hit both free throws without blinking. The message was clear: she was still here, still fighting, and nothing, not force, not aggression, not for shake. Her from that point forward, every minute burned with rivalry. Zara began controlling the tempo, commanding the court with poise, while Jaden pushed his team harder, yelling at teammates, demanding perfection, fighting every Westall point like it was an insult to his very name. By halftime, the scoreboard showed a tie, 38-38, but beneath those numbers lay an invisible war won, etched in the bruises on Zara's arms, and the fire in Jaden's eyes. In the locker room's coaches spoke strategies, but both captains sat in silence, not needing motivation because they weren't playing for trophies or stats. They were playing for something older and deeper. For Zara, it was proving that she belonged on that court, not just as a girl but as a leader. For Jaden, it was proving that no one, especially not her, could dethrone him from the kingdom he believed was his. As they stepped out for the second half, neither smiled, neither waved. Their teammates followed like soldiers behind rival kings. The battle wasn't over. In truth, it had only just begun. The third quarter began, not with noise but with a kind of silence that felt heavier than the loudest roar of silence, of a crowd collectively holding its breath, sensing the powder keg was seconds from exploding, because something unspoken simmered beneath every play, every glare, every muscle twitch from the two titans still locked in psychological warfare at center court's Sarah Miles and Jaden Carter. The captains, whose duel had now eclipsed the game itself. From the first possession, the tone changed. No longer a basketball match, it had evolved into a pressure cooker of pride, pain, and personal vendetta. Ridgewood came out swinging, literally and figuratively. Jaden pushed the pace to an almost reckless speed, forcing his teammates to run frantic transitions, drive harder, and swarm Zara every time she touched the ball, but Westall, instead of folding, rose with calculated fire. Zara adjusted with ice in her veins, absorbing the double teams and using them against Ridgewood like a master tactician. She faked them out, slowed down the pace, made the defenders move exactly where she wanted, and then bung a bounce pass, a perfect corner shot, or a sudden dash through the paint that left Ridgewood spinning. But the tension wasn't just on the scoreboard, it was in the shoulders, the jaw lines, the way players breathed, the way they stared when the whistle blew. Ridgewood's number 14 shoved Westall's forward during a rebound a second later. Westall's guard retaliated with an elbow under the rim. The refs missed it. The crowd erupted. The coaches screamed. And in the middle of it all, Zara and Jaden continued circling each other like lions refusing to blink. Then came the boiling point. Midway through the third, Westall ran a perfect isolation play, clearing the court so Zara could face Jaden one-on-one at the top of the key. She dribbled slowly, eyes locked with his, a half-smile playing on her lips. Jaden stepped forward, arms out, stance low, jaw clenched. She moved a hesitation, a crossover. Spin end as she drove right. Jaden read her and stepped in hard. There was contact, loud, full-bodied, and Zara collapsed. The whistle screamed. The gym went wild. Coaches flew off the benches. Westall's bench erupted in fury. Ridgewood's fans exploded. In defense, the refs huddled. Replay screens lit up. People shouted, but Zara again rose on her own. No tears, no limping. She simply stood, took the ball, and walked to the line while Jaden stood on the opposite end of the court, breathing heavily, his eyes flickering not with regret but with frustration, confusion, a storm of emotions he couldn't name. Because this wasn't going how it was supposed to go. He was supposed to dominate her break. Her down proved that she wasn't in his league. But instead, every time he hit harder, she came back sharper. And somewhere inside him, a fear he never admitted began to whisper. What if she's stronger than me, not just in skill, but in spirit? As the free throws dropped, Westall took the lead. Jaden slapped the floor, roaring at his teammates to wake up to fight harder, but their eyes were tired, their bodies bruised, their minds shaken by Westall's slow surgical resilience. Then came a timeout. Ridgewood called it after a missed layup and a quick three from Westall. The team huddled, but Jaden wasn't listening. His coach was yelling, but Jaden's eyes were fixed on the other bench where Zara sat, breathing deep, her teammates offering water and pats on the back. Her focus unbroken, unshaken, unafraid. She looked like a storm in stillness, and when the buzzer called them back, Jaden snapped into motion, charging out like a man possessed. He stole the ball, slammed home a dunk, then got in. Zara's face joying, chest puffed, trying to crack her calm, but she only blinked and walked back. Down the court, her silence was louder than his rage. And that silence echoed through the last 2 minutes of the third. Ridgewood's aggression turned into desperation, and Westall's momentum turned into a quiet avalanche. By the time the buzzer rang to end the quarter, the scoreboard read 6-1. Ridgewood 58, a three-point game, but it felt like more. Felt like the tide had turned. The cracks in Ridgewood's confidence had begun to show, and the fire in Jaden's eyes had started to flicker with something for and out as the players gathered their breath as the coaches prepped for the final war that would be the fourth quarter. One thing was undeniable. The pressure had done its damage. The crowd could feel it. The players could feel it. Even the court, scuffed, sweaty, and littered with intensity, seemed to hum with it, because games are won on scoreboards, but legends are made when everything breaks and you still choose to fight. The final quarter began under a sky of invisible pressure, the weight of pride and exhaustion pressing down like gravity on every pair of shoulders, every aching limb, every hopeful heart watching from the stands or behind phone screens, recording every second of what had become far more than a basketball game. It had become a story of legacy, identity, and war between two forces who had poured every ounce of themselves into this court, this moment, this rivalry. The scoreboard, Redale 61, Ridgewood 58. And though it was only a 3-point difference, both sides knew this wasn't just about points anymore. It was about who would last longer in the fire. Zara Miles stood at the edge of the court, hands on her knees, drenched in sweat, lungs burning, but her eyes sharp, locked, alive, never wavered from Jaden Carter, who paced back and forth like a caged beast, clenching his fists. His teeth grit his face. The picture of rage and desperation wrapped in pride. Neither spoke a word. They didn't need to. The entire arena had learned their language by now, the silent dialogue of stares the story told. In drives and steals, the kind of communication born from respect too deep to admit and competition too fierce to show mercy. The first few minutes of the fourth were brutal. Missed shots, rebounds turned into wrestling matches, coaches nearly ejected for arguing, doing calls, and players diving for loose balls like their lives depended on it. Jaden tried to rally his team, driving hard to the rim, drawing fouls, screaming with every point scored, trying to recapture the spark that once made him unstoppable, but something had shifted. Ridgewood's players were hesitant, second-guessing. Their bodies fatigued, their faith shaken by how Westall, led by Zara's unbreakable poise, kept answering every blow with one of their own. Zara, on the other hand, didn't yell, didn't pound her chest or flex after baskets. She led with presence, with timing, with the kind of calm leadership that made chaos seem orchestrated. She started running the offense like a conductor guiding a symphony, no wasted motion. No rushed passes, each possession, bleeding the clock, each cut purposeful, each screen opening space for someone else. She was everywhere, deflecting passes, blocking a shot, saving a ball from going out, and then seconds later, hitting a mid-range jumper, as if fatigue didn't exist in her world. And yet, even with all that, Ridgewood wouldn't go away. With 2 minutes left, the score was tied 7-6, 7-6. The crowd was a roar of white noise now. Half of it Ridgewood blue, the other Westall red. Everyone on their feet, phones up, voices cracking, hearts pounding. Every pass now felt like a decision with destiny. Every movement carried history. Jaden got the ball with 90 seconds left, called for an ISO, and went right at Zara. The moment everyone had waited for, captain versus captain, destiny versus defiance. He lowered his shoulder, tried to bully through, but she didn't budge. She slid with him step for step, forcing him into an awkward shot that clanged off the back iron. The rebound flew, bodies crashed, and Zara emerged with it, blood on her elbow, a scratch across her knee. But the ball was hers, and the moment belonged to her. Westall slowed it down, 40 seconds left. Zara passed, Cut got it back. Ridgewood collapsed into his own. She jabbed, stepped back, then crossed over, and moved into the lane. But Jaden was waiting. He leaped. And for a moment, time stopped. Warriors meeting in the air. Arms outstretched, dreams colliding above the rim, but Zara didn't force it. She twisted in the air and dished to her open forward, who caught and laid it in. Westall 78, Ridgewood 76. Timeout. The gym exploded. People screamed, stomped, waved signs. Cried. Jaden stood in the huddle, his coach yelling plays, but all he heard was the thump of his own heartbeat and the roar of his own failure creeping in. Took the ball with 20 seconds left. Eyes burning, this was his moment to rewrite everything, to silence the doubt, to snatch victory from the jaws of loss. He dribbled down, drove past one defender, crossed left, spun, and there she was again. Zara, always there, always reading him, always knowing what he'd do before he did it. He rose, she rose, they met. The ball left his fingers, soft, spinning, perfect form, and it kissed the backboard and rolled out. Gasp. Silent. Zara got the rebound. Ridge fouled, 7 seconds left. She walked to the line. As Jaden stood at half court, his hands on his head, breathing like he'd run through fire, the crowd couldn't even chant. They just watched first free throws. Westall 79, second off the rim, but rebounded by Westall. Timeout. The clock drained. Ridgewood got one last possession's desperation. A foot and he fell short. Buzzer final score, Westall 79, Ridgewood 76. The gym erupted, but not in wild, reckless celebration. Something quieter washed over the moment of recognition, an emotional stillness. As the players began to realize what they had just been part of, Zara dropped to her knees, exhausted but victorious as her teammates mobbed her. Jaden stood alone near the baseline, staring at the scoreboard, sweat dripping jaw, trembling not because he lost, but because something inside him had shifted. And then through the storm of hugs and cheers and tears, Zara walked across the court. Toward him the crowd hushed. Jaden turned, their eyes meeting. Once again, no trash talk, no bitterness, just two warriors who had given everything. She extended her hand. He took it, a long shake, followed by a nod. Not of surrender, but of acknowledgement, respect. That rare, sacred kind that can only be earned in the crucible of competition. The rivalry wasn't over, it never would be, but something had changed tonight in a gym filled with noise, pain, joy, heartbreak, and history. Two young athletes had shown the world what it meant to clash with everything you aren't, walk away not just with pride but with honor.